Hi, this is Erin from Blossy Bee. Welcome to my channel. So the plan for this video is to use up some epoxy resin left over after sealing and doming a coaster, which coincidentally also was made from leftover epoxy resin. To do that, I'm going to use a variety of trinket tray, jewellery and ornament moulds. And then after we see the results, we're going to turn some of the failures into successes and finish the pieces off. Sit back, admire those sparkles. So, in a previous video, number 13, High Risk, High Reward Stunning Dragonflies, I created this piece using leftover epoxy resin from another project. And the high risk refers to the fact that the resin had pretty much finished its what we call pot time, which is its workable time. Then, as I went on to dome and finish this piece off, I did it again. I made way too much resin. So, here you can see I've just finished that piece off. I have clear epoxy resin all over that. I did add a little bit of the two products I used as well, which is the Midas Touch from Just Resin and the Pixie Dust. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit more of each, just to get a little bit more intense colour. And as usual, I've got moulds on standby, as I'm sure we all do. And the two that I'm going to use straight away are the little hippo mould, and I've also got a little bear mould. So I'm just going to pour that resin into there. And unfortunately, that wasn't the only resin I had. I don't know what I was thinking when I made up that amount. But I do have more left over. So what I'm going to do is grab some other moulds and I'm going to just start filling those as well. So the next moulds I've chosen to work with are this little trinket dish, which is a heart shape, and it has a little lid. And I do give this a little bit of a wriggle and a jiggle to try and dislodge any air bubbles that may be there. But I think I forgot to do that with the lid, because you'll see in a moment it didn't turn out as well as I would have hoped. I still had more left over, so I then turned to a new mould, which was an earring mould. Now, I knew I didn't have enough to fill the entire mould, so I was just a little bit selective about which pieces I was going to make. These ones here I really enjoy making because they are really just little pieces that you can actually end up putting in all different orders and mixing and matching them with other pieces. And then I also end up using half of those earring moulds down the bottom, and also just with the tiny little bit I had left, I added some resin to the little dangle parts from another earring, because in my experience it's always nice to have more rather than less pieces to play around with when you're making jewellery pieces. And anything that I don't use, I just have a little container they all go into, and whenever I need a little cute charm or something to add to a key ring, that's my little go-to spot. So here you can see these are the little ones I'm referring to. If I'd had enough, I would have definitely made the whole earring up, but I only had enough for these little components here. And oh, phew, this resin was finally finished. So it came to demoulding time, and you'll see straight away the issue I had with the lid. So the corners there are both were filled with air pockets. So the base turns out really well. This is a very cute little mould, and it's perfect to have on a dressing table, a vanity, things like that, to store rings or other little trinkets in. and it came out very smooth and glossy. So now I had a base but no lid. And next I'm going to demould the earring pieces, and these came out very beautifully as well. Even though I was using leftover resin and I was keeping an eye on the clock because you don't have unlimited time, I still tried to be very careful and precise when pouring, and that eliminates a lot of the need for deburring and filing and all of those things that we just don't love as much as the actual creating process. Now, it did bug me that I didn't have a lid. So off screen, I did go ahead and pour another. I poured the one that you can see down the bottom left, and I did put some dragonfly decals into it, and they looked great. But the same thing happened. So what I did was I took my Dremel tool and I sanded all around the edge until I'd taken off all of those pieces, and I've turned these into little fridge magnets. And I went ahead and poured a perfect lid finally. So here you can see the result. There's the little trinket dish with the lid, and my little bear, my moose, and the two magnets, which were previously lids. So now I turned my attention to assembling the jewellery pieces. So here I've got a box of charms. As I said earlier, I love the fact that you don't have to just use cast resin pieces as they were intended by the mould makers. You can use them in any way you want. And I did spend a little bit of time here having a think about that and wondering what I could do with them. And so this is just a little sort of a behind the scenes look into my thinking process when I'm making jewellery, particularly earrings. I do like to try different charms and just different findings and seeing if I can make them a little bit more unique. After all of this though, I did end up just using the pieces, but I thought I'd keep this in because it does show that you can be creative and that you can add little things to your jewellery to make it stand out and more appealing. So after I decided that I'm going to just stick with what I had, I then need to start choosing the findings. So I decided, of course, being gold, that I would choose gold toned findings. And the first tray you'll see is my larger. These are usually my 8mm up sized gold toned findings. And so the mould that I used is quite chunky. The pieces are quite thick. So I need to actually move up to a size, a 12mm ring to get through jump ring. And I'm also just considering which earring hooks I'm going to use. So I have a few different varieties available to me, and I decided in the end to go for the ones that were closest in tone to those big sturdy jump rings, because I knew that the jump rings were going to be the most important part of these pieces. And so what I do every time I make jewellery is I get all of the components out that I need and I lay them out so I can visualise it. And it also means that I ensure that each of the findings is matching, because I have made earrings up in the past and I've held them up and I've thought, what's going on here. One's a bit longer than the other, or one's a slightly different angle or colour. And that can happen when you have findings that get mixed up together. So here's my smaller tray. These have my 4mm and up findings in them. And of course, to attach to the earrings, I do need some teeny tiny little jump rings. And yeah, so this process really helps me when I'm building my earrings, and it just makes me feel a little bit more organised as well. So everyone will have their favourite types of pliers. I'm struggling with osteoarthritis in my hands at the moment, and really no pliers are doing it for me, and I don't make a lot of jewellery at the moment, but I do like the ones I'm using here. They give me a good grip. So when you open your jump rings, remember you are always twisting them sideways to open. You are not pulling them apart. That's really important, because if you pull them apart, it is very difficult to get them back together. Now, these particular jump rings are very strong. They are a 12mm diameter, and I'm not sure of the gauge, but from memory, they're one of the thicker gauges that I have of wire. And so it does take considerable pressure to put these on, but I do always try and use these sort of, I guess, chunky findings in a way for my bigger pieces of jewellery, just for that added safety, security, and to get that thickness covered by the jump ring. So unfortunately, in a few minutes, I had a memory incident with my camera, and I didn't get to video the rest of the making of the jewellery, but the process is pretty much the same. I did include a little bit here I wanted to show you. That little tool in the background is just a little handheld drill. And occasionally when you pour resin into moulds which have the earring or keyring holes, you can get just the slightest overpour, and the hole's there, but there might be a thin film of resin covering it. And so I just have a little handheld drill beside me so that I can easily just pierce that little extra layer and get the findings in as they ought to be. I recently bought this little L-shaped velvet display stand that you'll see in a moment, and I actually really like to have something near me when I'm working with jewellery to hang each piece as I complete it. It helps me make sure that my pieces are symmetrical, and it also helps me ensure that all of the pieces in a collection have a flowing aesthetic, so that I don't jump around and use different findings and tones and things like that. So I do like having something to hand that I can sit my pieces on, and I like looking at them as well. they make me very happy. I've probably made thousands and thousands of pairs of earrings over the last few years, and yeah, I love each and every one of them. I remember making most of them, and I just love making pretty things. So I'm just going to hook this up over that velvet stand, and yeah, it was a fun project. So what started out using up leftover resin from one project turned into using leftover resin from that project. But I'm happy to say that after I finished all of this, look, I try and be careful with my measurements, but every now and then you do make a little bit extra, and it's always good to have those moulds on hand. Thank you so much for letting me share my little crafting adventures with you. And if you would like to like, share, comment or subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. And I'm going to show you some photos now of the completed works. So thank you again for watching. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.